Your Honor, she's just a blogger, my ex-husband argued. No stable income. I should have full custody. My phone lit up. The Forbes reporter's text was visible. Congratulations on making the 30 under 30 list. Your media company's $2.8 million revenue is impressive. The judge asked to see my phone. My ex-husband's lawyer started sweating because he knew what his client didn't, that his opposition research had catastrophically failed to uncover the empire I'd built while Trevor was busy cheating with his CrossFit instructor. The Honorable Judge Patricia Hawthorne adjusted her reading glasses, studying my phone screen with the kind of intensity usually reserved for examining forged documents. The courtroom fell silent except for the nervous tapping of Trevor's Italian leather shoes against the linoleum floor, shoes I'd bought him 3 years ago when I still believed marriage meant something. Ms. Martinez, Judge Hawthorne said slowly, her voice carrying across the courtroom like thunder before a storm. Would you care to explain why Forbes is congratulating you on revenues of $2.8 million when your financial disclosures indicate an annual income of $42,000? Part 1. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. I felt everyone's eyes on me, Trevor's wide with shock, his lawyer Richardson's narrowing with calculation, my own attorney Sarah's carefully neutral. But with the ghost of a smile playing at her lips. Even the court reporter's fingers had paused above her keys, waiting for my answer. Your Honor, I began, standing despite my shaking knees, I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the nature of my work. A misunderstanding? Trevor burst out, his perfectly styled hair actually moving for once. Mia, what the hell is this? You told me you wrote mommy blog posts about diaper reviews. Judge Hawthorne's gavel came down once, sharp. Mr. Hartwell, you'll address the court, not your ex-wife. And you'll do so when asked. She turned back to me. Please continue, Ms. Martinez. I took a breath, tasting the recycled air of courtroom 3B, the place where my marriage was officially ending. And my secret was about to explode like a perfectly timed content release. Your Honor, I do run a blog. Several, actually. What started as Mia's Mommy Moments has grown into a digital media company called Lioness Media. We operate 12 different websites, a podcast network, and an educational platform for female entrepreneurs. That's impossible, Trevor muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. She barely knew how to use Instagram when we met. Sarah stood smoothly. Your Honor, if I may? My client has been remarkably modest about her business achievements, even in our own meetings. However, given Mr. Hartwell's accusations about her fitness as a parent due to financial instability, perhaps it's time for full disclosure. Judge Hawthorne nodded. I'm inclined to agree. Ms. Martinez, I'm going to need a complete explanation. Start from the beginning. The beginning. How do you explain that your entire secret empire was built on spite, determination, and the crushing realization that the man you'd married viewed you as nothing more than a pretty accessory who'd gotten inconveniently pregnant? 5 years ago, I started, my voice growing stronger, I was a marketing manager at Patterson Tech. When I got pregnant with Emma, I planned to take standard maternity leave. But complications required bed rest for the last trimester. Trevor, Mr. Hartwell, suggested I quit to focus on the baby. I remembered that conversation perfectly. Trevor, fresh from his promotion to senior partner at his law firm, magnanimously offering to take care of everything while I focused on what really mattered. At the time, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, I'd been grateful. After Emma was born, I wanted to return to work. But between Trevor's schedule and his insistence that daycare would damage our daughter, it became clear that wasn't realistic. So I started a blog during her nap times. Just something to keep my mind active. Your Honor, Richardson interrupted, this is all very touching, but hardly relevant to, I'll determine relevance, Counselor. Judge Hawthorne cut him off. Continue, Ms. Martinez. The blog gained traction faster than I expected. Within 6 months, I had 50,000 monthly readers. Brands started reaching out for sponsored content. I was making enough to cover groceries, which felt like a victory. I smiled, remembering my first $500 check from a baby food company. Trevor had laughed, calling it cute that I had a little hobby. But I realized something. The mommy blog space was saturated, but there was a gap, content for mothers that treated them as whole people, not just caregivers. So I launched a second site focused on career re-entry after children. Then a third about financial literacy for women. Each one targeted a different need I'd identified in my audience. Trevor was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. In 7 years of marriage, he'd never once asked about my work beyond, how's your little blog thing going? The answer was always fine, because explaining felt pointless when he'd already dismissed it. By year 2, I continued, I was managing 5 sites and had hired my first virtual assistant. I incorporated as Lioness Media LLC, opened a business bank account, and started treating it like the company it was becoming. I reinvested everything back into growth, better hosting, professional design, freelance writers, eventually full-time employees. Employees? Trevor choked out. You have employees? Sarah shot him a withering look. Perhaps if Mr. Hartwell had shown any interest in his wife's career, this wouldn't come as such a shock. Your Honor, Richardson stood, my client was under the impression that his wife was just a blogger, Judge Hawthorne finished. Yes, we established that. Ms. Martinez, please continue. I pulled out a folder I'd kept hidden until now, spreading documents across the table. These are Lioness Media's financials for the last 3 years. Year 1, $340,000 in revenue. Year 2, $1.2 million. Year 3, $2.8 million. We're projected to hit $4 million next year. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Trevor's face had gone from red to white to an interesting shade of green. Richardson was furiously scribbling notes, probably calculating how badly he'd miscalculated this case. The $42,000 I reported, I explained, is what I paid myself as salary. The rest was reinvested in the business or kept in the company accounts. I've been building something sustainable, not just cashing out for short-term gain. Why? Judge Hawthorne asked, and for the first time, her stern expression showed genuine curiosity. Why hide this from your husband? It was the question I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. I looked at Trevor, really looked at him for the first time in months. His handsome face, the one that had charmed me at a tech conference 8 years ago, was twisted with emotions I couldn't quite read. Betrayal? Anger? Shame? Because, I said quietly, every time I tried to share successes, they were minimized. When I mentioned hitting 100,000 readers, Trevor said it was nice that housewives had hobbies now. When a major brand wanted to partner with me, he worried it would interfere with dinner plans. When I suggested getting a nanny so I could attend a digital marketing conference, he accused me of abandoning our daughter. That's not, Trevor started. I have the texts, I said simply. Would you like me to read them? Richardson put a hand on Trevor's arm, silencing him. So I stopped sharing, I continued. I built my empire during nap times, after bedtime, in the margins of the life Trevor deemed acceptable. I attended virtual conferences with Emma on my hip. I took client calls from the park. I wrote content at 4 a.m. before anyone woke up. And yes, I hid the true extent of it, because it was easier than fighting about every decision. Judge Hawthorne turned to Trevor. Mr. Hartwell, were you aware your wife was running any kind of business? Trevor straightened his tie, a nervous gesture I knew well. I knew she had her blog. She'd mention it sometimes. But $1 million company? Employees? How was I supposed to know? By asking, Judge Hawthorne said dryly. By showing interest. By viewing your wife as a partner rather than a dependent. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Ms. Martinez, this Forbes recognition, tell me about that. I pulled up the email on my phone, handing it to the bailiff to pass to the judge. Forbes 30 under 30 in media. They've been tracking Lioness Media's growth for the past year. The official announcement goes live tomorrow, but they sent courtesy notification today. Of all the days, Sarah murmured beside me, and I had to suppress a smile. The timing was coincidental, but it couldn't have been more perfect if we'd orchestrated it. Your Honor, Richardson finally found his voice, this changes the financial landscape of the divorce settlement. We'll need to reassess. What this changes, Judge Hawthorne interrupted, is the custody discussion. Mr. Hartwell, you've spent the last hour arguing that your ex-wife is financially unstable and therefore an unfit primary parent. You've presented yourself as the stable provider. Would you care to revise your position? Trevor looked like a man watching his carefully constructed case crumble. Which, of course, he was. Your Honor, I had no idea. Mia never told me, because you never asked, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. 7 years, Trevor. 7 years of, how was your day? Answered with, how's the blog thing? 7 years of you scheduling dinners with partners and their wives where I was introduced as Trevor's wife, she stays home with Emma. 7 years of being invisible in my own marriage. That's not fair, Trevor protested. I was working. So was I. The words exploded out of me. I was working while breastfeeding. Working while you golfed with clients. Working while you had drinks with the CrossFit instructor who apparently does more than train your abs. The last part slipped out before I could stop it. Trevor's face went scarlet. Your Honor, Richardson said quickly, infidelity isn't grounds for. No, Judge Hawthorne agreed, but it does speak to character. And character is very much relevant in custody determinations. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from my COO, TechCrunch wants to do a feature on Lioness Media. Also, Sophia just closed the Nordstrom partnership. $500,000 deal. I showed it to Sarah, who couldn't quite suppress her grin. Your Honor, Sarah said, may we request a brief recess? Given these revelations, I believe Mr. Hartwell and his counsel might benefit from time to reconsider their position on custody arrangements. Judge Hawthorne looked at the clock. We'll take 30 minutes. But let me be clear, when we return I want full financial disclosure from Ms. Martinez and I want to hear from Mr. Hartwell about why this court should entertain his claim that a successful businesswoman is somehow less capable of parenting than a man who didn't notice his wife built a media empire in their living room. The gavel came down, and suddenly I could breathe again. As people filed out of the courtroom, Trevor remained frozen in his chair, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Mia, he said as I passed, wait. Please. I stopped but didn't turn around. Is it true, he asked. All of it? The employees, the revenue, Forbes. Now I did turn, meeting his eyes. Every word. But the saddest part, Trevor? The saddest part is that you have to ask. The courthouse bathroom was a refuge of ugly fluorescent lighting and industrial soap. I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to smudge the makeup I'd applied at 5 a.m. after finishing a conference call with our Sydney-based developer. My reflection looked back at me, 31 years old, shadows under my eyes from years of 18-hour days. But with a fire there that hadn't existed when I was Trevor's ornamental wife. The bathroom door opened, and Trevor's mother walked in. Because of course she did. Hello, Victoria, I said, reaching for paper towels. Victoria Hartwell looked like she'd stepped out of a Connecticut yacht club, pearl necklace, burgundy suit, silver hair and a flawless chignon. She'd never quite approved of Trevor marrying a Latina girl from Phoenix, though she'd been too well-bred to say it outright. $2.8 million, she said without preamble. Is that correct? The business revenue? Yes. She studied me in the mirror, her blue eyes sharp behind designer frames. And Trevor had no idea? You'd have to ask Trevor what he did or didn't know. Don't be coy, Mia. It doesn't suit you. She moved to the sink beside me, checking her lipstick. Although apparently, quite a bit doesn't suit the woman we thought you were. The woman you thought I was? I corrected, the quiet wife who hosted dinner parties and made sure Trevor's shirts were pressed and never mentioned that she was negotiating six-figure deals while making your son's favorite pot roast. Victoria's laugh was unexpected. Do you know what I did before I married Trevor's father? I shook my head. I was general counsel for Blackstone Industries. Youngest woman ever in that position. I negotiated million-dollar contracts and hostile takeovers. Then I met Richard, got pregnant with Trevor, and that was that. Different times. She snapped her purse shut. I spent 30 years being Richard Hartwell's wife. By the time he died, I'd forgotten how to be anything else. Victoria, you were smarter than me, she interrupted. You kept building. Even if you had to hide it. She met my eyes in the mirror. Trevor is my son, and I'll support him. But mother to mother? Don't let them diminish what you've built. Not in there, not anywhere. She left without another word, leaving me staring after her. In 7 years, it was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. My phone buzzed. Emma's school. My heart rate spiked, the universal parent panic at unexpected school calls. Ms. Martinez? This is Principal Washington. Nothing's wrong, she added quickly. But Emma's been telling her classmates that her mommy is going to be in a magazine, and her teacher was concerned she might be embellishing. I almost laughed. She's not embellishing. I'll be featured in Forbes magazine. Emma overheard me on a call this morning. Oh. Principal Washington sounded delighted. How wonderful. We'd love to have you speak at Career Day, if you're interested. I'd be honored, I said, meaning it. Thank you for checking in. After ending the call, I allowed myself a moment of pride. Emma knew. My brilliant, observant daughter had been watching me work, absorbing the lesson that mothers could be more than one thing. That was worth more than any Forbes listing. Sarah poked her head into the bathroom. Ready? Richardson wants to discuss settlement terms before we go back in. They're folding? Like a house of cards in a hurricane. Her grin was sharp. Turns out Trevor's been less than honest about his own finances. That CrossFit instructor? She's been living in a condo he purchased 6 months ago. The news should have hurt. Instead, I felt only relief. While I'd been building an empire, Trevor had been building a double life. We were both liars, in our way. The difference was what we'd lied about. Richardson's conference room smelled like desperation and expensive cologne. Trevor sat at the far end of the table, his phone in pieces in front of him, a nervous habit from law school, disassembling and reassembling things when stressed. His lawyer looked like he'd aged 5 years in 30 minutes. Ms. Martinez, Richardson began, we'd like to propose a revised custody arrangement. I'm listening. Joint custody, with Emma's primary residence remaining with you. Mr. Hartwell would have Wednesday evenings and alternating weekends. That's less than he has now, I pointed out. Currently, our temporary arrangement gave Trevor every other week. Mr. Hartwell's schedule is demanding, Richardson said carefully. He feels this arrangement would be more sustainable. I looked at Trevor. You're giving up time with Emma? He finally met my eyes. I'm being realistic. You've been her primary caregiver since birth. He paused, reassembling his phone with shaking fingers. I don't even know what she eats for breakfast. You made sure I never had to know. You never asked to know, I said quietly. There's a difference. Is there? His laugh was bitter. You hid an entire company from me, Mia. What else don't I know? What else about our life was fake? Our life was real, I said. Emma is real. The problem was you only saw the parts that fit your vision. Trophy wife, stay-at-home mom, supportive spouse. Anything outside that narrative was invisible to you. That's not, he stopped, running his hands through his hair. Maybe that's fair. But you could have told me. You could have made me see. Could I? When you laughed at my 100,000 readers? When you called my business calls chit-chat? When you told your partners I kept myself busy with little projects? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to screenshots I'd saved. December 15th, honey, can you skip your blog thing? The Henderson deal needs attention. March 3rd, why do you need to attend a marketing conference? It's not like you have a real job. June 22nd, if you spent less time on the computer and more time at the gym, you'd lose that baby weight. Each quote landed like a slap. Trevor's face went from red to white. I documented everything, I continued. Not for court, I never planned on this. But because I needed to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That my work mattered, even if my husband didn't think so. Your Honor, Richardson said weakly, we're prepared to agree to Ms. Martinez's original custody proposal. Primary physical custody with generous visitation for Mr. Hartwell. And child support? Sarah asked. Trevor's head snapped up. Child support? She makes more than, he stopped, the irony hitting him. The woman he'd called financially unstable was worth nearly $3 million. Based on California guidelines and both parties' incomes, Sarah continued smoothly, Mr. Hartwell would owe approximately $3,200 per month. That's acceptable, Richardson said, looking like he'd swallowed glass. We spent the next 20 minutes hammering out details, pickup times, holiday schedules, decision-making authority. Trevor agreed to everything with mechanical nods, his earlier fight completely gone. When we finished, he stood abruptly. I need air, he muttered, leaving the room. Richardson began gathering papers. Ms. Martinez, for what it's worth, you've built something impressive. My daughter reads one of your sites, returning to remarkable, I think. That's one of ours, yes. It helped her go back to law school after her twins were born. She quotes your articles at family dinners. He smiled ruefully. I should have done better research. After he left, Sarah and I sat in companionable silence. You know what the ironic part is? I said finally. I would have given it all up. In the beginning. If Trevor had just seen me. Really seen me. I would have folded the company and gone back to corporate life or been the wife he wanted. But he made me invisible, so I became invisible. And in the shadows, I built something he couldn't diminish. Thank God for toxic masculinity, Sarah said dryly. It creates the best entrepreneurs. Back in the courtroom, Judge Hawthorne reviewed our agreement with efficient approval. This seems equitable. Ms. Martinez, I have some final questions about your business structure. For the next hour, I laid out everything, the holding company, the subsidiaries, the international contractors, the revenue streams. I explained our pivot to educational content, our subscription model, our expansion into podcasting. Judge Hawthorne asked sharp questions about scalability and sustainability, showing a business acumen that shouldn't have surprised me but did. You've built this entire infrastructure while being the primary caregiver for a young child, she summarized. That's remarkable. I had help, I admitted. Virtual assistants, freelancers, eventually employees. But yes, I was present for every milestone, every school event, every sick day. I just worked around it. Like millions of mothers do, Judge Hawthorne said. The difference is you monetized it brilliantly. She turned to Trevor. Mr. Hartwell, do you have anything to add? Trevor looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, this man who commanded courtrooms and boardrooms with equal ease. No, Your Honor. I agree to all terms. Very well. I'm granting the divorce decree with the custody arrangement as specified. Ms. Martinez will maintain primary physical custody. Mr. Hartwell will pay child support as calculated. She paused. Mr. Hartwell, a word of advice? Your daughter is watching. She's just learning what to expect from the men in her life based on how you treat her mother. Do better. The gavel came down one final time. Just like that, 7 years of marriage ended with a sound that echoed through the courtroom. Outside the courthouse, the October sun felt too bright after the fluorescent cave of family court. Trevor waited by the steps, hands in his pockets. Mia. I stopped, adjusting my bag. Trevor. I'm sorry. The words came out rushed. Not just for CrossFit Christine. For all of it. For not seeing you. For making you feel like you had to hide. For being the kind of husband who made his wife build a secret empire just to feel valued. I'm not blameless, I said. I could have fought harder to be seen. I could have insisted. Instead, I chose deception. You chose survival, he corrected. I wish I'd known the woman who could build what you built. I think I would have liked her. You did know her, I said sadly. You just didn't notice her. He nodded, accepting the hit. Can I ask you something? The business, when did you know it was real? When did you know you'd made it? I thought about it. Last year. Emma had strep throat, and I had a major client presentation. I did the entire pitch from her bedroom, muted when she coughed, closing deals between doses of antibiotics. We signed a $400,000 contract, and I realized I'd built something that bent around my life instead of breaking it. That's when I knew. And I never even knew you were sick that week, Trevor said quietly. God, Mia. How did we get here? One invisible day at a time, I said. A car pulled up, Sarah's sensible Honda. That's my ride. Trevor, be good to Emma. Be present. Ask about her breakfast preferences. Learn her teachers' names. Don't make her invisible too. I won't, he promised. And Mia? Congratulations. On Forbes. On everything. You deserve it. I climbed into Sarah's car without answering. Some things were too late to matter. Home? Sarah asked. Office first, I said. I have a company to run. As we drove away from the courthouse, my phone lit up with notifications. The Forbes article was live. My email exploded with interview requests, partnership inquiries, and messages from women who'd found themselves in my content. 3 major VCs wanted meetings. The Today Show hoped I could appear next week. But the message that mattered most was from Emma, sent from her school iPad. Mrs. Johnson says you're gonna be famous. Can we still have pizza night? Always, baby, I texted back. Every Friday, forever. Because that was the truth Trevor never understood. The empire wasn't built in spite of motherhood, it was built because of it. Every article about finding yourself after kids, every resource for women re-entering the workforce, every piece of content about valuing your own dreams, it all came from the fierce love of a mother who refused to disappear. The Forbes headline read, From mommy blogger to media mogul, how Mia Martinez built a $2.8 million empire during nap time. But I knew better. I built it in the margins, in the shadows, in the spaces where invisible women have always worked magic. The only difference was, now the whole world could see. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I sat in my home office, the one Trevor had called Mia's craft room, and surveyed my empire. 12 websites generating passive income. 43 employees across 6 countries. Educational courses that had helped thousands of women start their own businesses. A podcast network reaching millions. My lawyer's final words echoed, you know you can afford much better representation than me now. You believe the invisible woman, I'd replied. That makes you priceless. Tomorrow, I'd wake up to a new reality. Interviews, expansion plans, the weight of being suddenly visible. But tonight, I allowed myself this moment of quiet triumph. My phone buzzed. A DM on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. The profile pic showed a woman about my age, tired eyes but smiling. Hi Mia. You don't know me, but I've been reading your content for 3 years. I just left my emotionally abusive husband. Started my own consulting firm. Signed my first client today. Thank you for showing me invisible doesn't mean powerless. Another invisible woman building her empire, I smiled, typing back, invisible women are everywhere. We're just getting started. Because that was the real fortune I'd built, not the millions in revenue or the Forbes recognition or the victory in court. It was the network of women who'd found themselves in my words, who'd learned that being unseen didn't mean being unworthy. Who'd discovered that sometimes the best revenge isn't being seen at all. It's becoming too powerful to ignore.